Hello and welcome to the Podium Book with U-Hinge Binding Workshop. I am Tricia Morris from Club Scrap, and I can't wait to create this book with you today. Now, if you've never taken a project similar to this with me before, I highly recommend just watching the video one time through, and then you'll have a much better understanding of how this project comes together and a better chance of success. Then go back and watch it step by step, work at your very own pace, follow along with the instructions as well as we make the book together. Let's get started. This Podium book with the hinge binding has a complete project kit available while supplies last. It includes a Rainforest page kit as well as the book board components and a foam brush. You'll notice that there are two things we won't be using from the components workshop kit for this particular project. You can set aside the wire and the binding rings for a different project. To get started, I'll be using my favorite trimmer from Fiskars. We carry this at Club Scrap, and an accordion pocket file to stay organized. Now, if you don't have one of these, don't let that stop you from making this project. Simply take some Post-it notes or labels and set up 4 piles A, B, C, and D so we can stay organized. And for review, this is our gorgeous book, and it has a beautifully wrapped cover and spine and all these wonderful inside pages. You'll be able to utilize everything in that kit that I gave you. To get started, I'm going to set aside absolutely everything that came in your kit except for the 12 by 12 inch papers. I'm going to put these papers in the order we'll be using them, and we're going to start right off by trimming 2 of these leaf prints. So I'll take 2 of them, I'll put them face down on a pile, and then we'll flip it over again later. Next up, I'm going to look for the medium green in this kit. There's a light, a medium, and a dark, so make sure you grab the medium, and I'm going to take 2 of those and put them face down or texture side down on my work surface. Next, I'll take 2 of these beautiful prints face down, 2 light green, 2 aqua, and 2 dark green. All of those go next. Then we're going to be at the cut aparts, so take the one with all the strips, put that down, and then the one with smaller images and these 2 aqua strips on the right, put that face down. Flip the whole stack over, and then we can get to work on trimming our papers. I'll take my accordion pocket file, and I'm going to place it underneath the base of my trimmer, and that way I can access those file folders easily to stay organized. Taking just our first print, the leaf print, we want to make sure that we know which direction the grain is going, because later on, this is going to be wrapping our outside cover. So if I hold the paper by the center of an edge and just wiggle it a little bit, maybe push on it, take note of how it feels, then rotate 1 turn. Oh, this seems to push in much easier. This is a little bit more stiff. This pushes in more easily. So I'm going to make sure that paper pushes in easily from the top of my trimmer to the bottom, and we'll trim it at 10. So find the hole number 10 here. Make sure your paper is flush at the top ridge there on the trimmer base. Stabilize it by pushing down on the clear bar and make your slice. Then rotate the paper so it's horizontal now and trim it at 6. You just made yourself 2 outside covers for our book, and we're going to put all of that stuff in pocket A. And everything else that doesn't have an official home will go in pocket D for decorative items or your pile that you've labeled D. The next print, we don't have to worry about the grain. It won't be bending or folding in any direction in particular. So let's go ahead and just trim this at 7 3/4. To find that, I look for the hole number 7, go left 3 columns, 1, 2, 3. That's my 7 3/4. Then we're going to rotate, and I'm going to give you 1 regular measurement and 1 funky measurement. So the regular one is 9 3/4. That's 9. 1, 2, 3 to the left. That's 9 3/4. Now bear with me. We're going to go to 4 7/8. Okay, no problem. 4 7/8 is halfway between 4 3/4 and 5. There's a little line there. So 4, 1, 2, 3 columns over, plus halfway between the 4 3/4 and the 5. And that gives me 2 rectangles that are the same size going in pocket B. And then you had this little piece that fell off the end, plus this larger piece. All of that is for decoration. So I'm going to put that in pocket D. Next up, we're going to take 1 sheet of the medium green. Check your grain direction so that the paper is dipping easily from the top of the trimmer to the bottom. Again, doing that makes the paper fold more willingly in the direction we want it to eventually go. So let's trim at 11 3/4. And always remembering to stabilize on the clear bar of this particular trimmer. It's so nice to have that. It keeps the paper from moving around as the blade goes down. And then we're going to slide off to 10, a nice easy number. Now rotate this piece, trim at 11. There we go, 11. 9 3/4. 9 3/4, and 8 1/2. Okay, you just made another part of your outside cover, and this is going to go in pocket A, this large piece. And then the pieces that fell to the right of your trimmer, there's going to be 2 of them, 1, 2, that are the same size. They're currently 1 1/4 by 8 1/2. We're going to stack them neatly together and trim them horizontally at 7 3/4. Now these 2 pieces need to be scored actually. So before filing them, I'm going to set them aside and I'm going to score them a little bit later. 2 smaller pieces fell off the end of that cut, plus this other narrower strip. We're not using those. I'm just going to plop those in D and probably dispose of them later. And then you have this piece right here, this wider green. It's 1 3/4 by 12. Let's trim it at 5. Take that 5-inch piece that you just made, put it in pocket A, and then all the rest of the pieces that are here, not too many, those go in D. Don't have an official assignment. We're already moving on to page 2 of our instructions, and we're going to take the next sheet of medium green and once again check our grain direction. Wow, do you see how it dipped dramatically in that direction? We wanted that dip coming from the top to the bottom of the trimmer, just as it's shown in the sketch on your instructions. We'll cut at 11 1/4 and 7 3/4. Now rotate and trim at 11, 9 3/4, and 8 1/2. You just made the inside cover for your book and put it in pocket B. And then you have these 2 strips again that are the same size. There's one that's a little smaller. The same size strips, those go in pocket C. And then you have this little scrappy that fell off the end for D. Next up, pick up the wider strip. This is 3 1/2 by 12. We'll cut it at 6 3/4 and place that in pocket A. And the remaining pieces that you have here are for pocket D. Next, we have the easiest thing to do. We're going to grab these 2 prints and check that the grain dips from top to bottom and trim at 7 3/4. 7 3/4. Set these pieces aside to be scored and plop these 2 in pocket D. I'm going to take the light green now, do the same thing, checking that the grain goes from the top to the bottom, and trim at 7 3/4. Set these aside to be scored. Place your scrap in pocket D. It's big scrap, I know, but we're going to be able to use that. Oh, this is nice, thick, heavy paper here. This is like a 100-pound cover weight. I'm checking my grain. It pushes in most easily this direction. This is much harder. That's how you're going to know. And once again, 7 3/4. Set these aside to be scored. I'm just going to go ahead and leave that here. Find the grain direction on the dark green, both sheets, and trim at 7 3/4. This gets scored, and these pieces that fell off the end, D. And you're going to love decorating with those. It's going to give you some nice photo mats and things like that. Now we reach the cut-aparts. I'm thinking we're probably not going to have time to guide you through this process, but I'll throw it in here just in case and speed it up if I need to. The magic of television, right? So in the corners of these cut-aparts are some hash marks. Those are trimming guides that we need to remove the outer edge of this paper from the cut-apart before we start in on really trimming it all out. So I'll trim a little bit off, and that leaves a tiny bit that remains. That allows me to rotate the cut-apart and see exactly now where I need to line up that hash mark with the top, the blade that I can see at the top, and also the blade I can see down here at the bottom. I can just see the outer edge of that stainless steel blade. And then I'm going to rotate and once again line up those hash marks. Rotate again, and now I can look at the number 12 over here. Rotate one more time. And I'm going to neaten up that last cut I made and just take a shaving. And so now I'm ready to go because this piece of paper is exactly 12 by 12. In your kit, you have this lighter weight piece of mat board. I call this mat board. It's like twice the thickness of a cereal box, let's say, but our book board is the really heavy stuff, so don't take that. That's really hard to cut through. This is not so bad. So I'm just gonna have you trim this 11-inch piece, just cut it at 10 and 6. Now the 6-inch piece is technically a scrap, and the other 2 pieces, add those to pocket A. Let's set aside our trimmer and swap it out for a score pal. I had you set aside these 2 narrow strips, and I realized I was missing 2 of them. I had you file them in pocket C a little bit prematurely, so just grab those out again. We need to score these so they can grow up to become the binding hinge for our book. Now I'm using a metal tip stylus with my score pal as opposed to the plastic bone folder that comes with it. So I'm just gonna place one of these pieces vertically into my score pal. And it needs to be scored at 1/2 and 3/4 of an inch. Now I'm right-handed, so this is kind of an awkward position. I'm gonna show it to you this way, but give you an alternative. So this is scoring at 1/2 of an inch and 3/4 of an inch. And what that does is creates 2 1/2-inch flaps and then a 1/4 inch center hinge, okay? Now if you wanna do it that way, you can, and if you're left-handed, you might want to, but I'm right-handed, so I'm gonna bring it over here. Make sure the texture side of the paper is facing up, and I'm going to score at 11 1/4 and 11 1/2. Now, to do that is not in the instructions. This is a bonus you get for watching the video for my right-hander. So 11 1/4 and 11 1/2, or again, that would be 1/2 and 3/4 over here, but I'm going to do this last one here, 11 1/4 and 11 1/2. Just makes it a little easier to support the piece while you're scoring it. Now your 4 hinges can go into pocket C. So this is what my organizer looks like right now. It's kind of got all kinds of things sticking out of it. Okay, then we have these larger pieces of paper here. And these all 8 of them need to be scored horizontally. So by horizontal, I always mean the long way, or along the long edge at 7 3/4. So you just whip through those. And if this paper is a little on the heavier side, you need to put more firm pressure so you get a nice score line that you can see to fold on, 7 3/4, okay? If you're scoring on a textured paper, like as is in the case of this green, 7 3/4, you want the texture side facing up when you score. And then on the last, but at least on the print, this might be a little bit more fragile, so not as much pressure on the print, 7 3/4. Okay, that's it for the scoring. I'm gonna set this aside. And all of these pieces go in pocket C. Well, I guess at this point we could empty pocket A to look at all the things we're gonna be doing in our first section of instructions. Basically, that's wrapping the outside cover of our beautiful book and creating the hinge. I'm going to begin by locating the square book boards that came in your project kit. And since they are square, we don't really have to worry so much about, like, there's no vertical or horizontal, it's just square. And I'm gonna take my grid ruler and a pencil and mark a line 3 inches from one edge. So my ruler happens to be 3 inches wide. It's really kind of handy to be able to just take the ruler itself. Now, if you're not lucky enough to have a ruler like this, then you'll have to measure from 3 inches with just a regular ruler, 3 inches, connect the lines as you did when you were, when you learned how to measure. And then we're gonna repeat that with the other board. As you can see, I'm using the board to kind of help level my ruler along the edge of the board at the 3 inch mark. Again, this is a 3 inch wide ruler and a line 3 inches from the edge. Next, I'll take this 8.5 by 10 medium green cover. I'm gonna place it vertically on my work surface with the smooth side facing down, because I'm gonna make some pencil marks on this that I don't wanna have to see later. And I'm gonna mark a line 1 inch from the bottom edge of this paper. So I find the 1 inch mark on our ruler, and that's basically 8 cubes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 cubes makes an inch. Just make sure it's all level and draw a line. Again, if you don't have a grid ruler like this, you'll need to measure 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, connect your lines like you've done in the past. And then I'm gonna mark again 3 inches from one edge of this paper. So just need to line that up. 3 inches, draw a line, and now I have this upside down T on my paper. All of this has a lot of strategy, and these are really basic bookbinding skills that are needed for creating a beautifully wrapped cover. So if you've never done this before, you're gonna just, wow, this works so well. Next, I'm going to take some of our bookbinding glue. This is a wonderful surface for working with books, and you'll need it for this project or an alternative type of PVA glue, but I love my bookbinding glue, and a foam brush. Now here I'm going to be taking one of those 8x8 covers, and I've marked this area. This is the 3-inch area that I've marked, okay? This area, stay away from that. I'm only going to apply glue within this 3-inch area. Once I've done that, I'm going to turn this over. Now I'm flying blind. I don't know where my glue is, but I know where my landing space is. My landing space is the intersection of my 1-inch line and my 3-inch line. So when I place this here very carefully aligned, the glue will be in the exact right spot. So basically this just helps you with your little planning. So I'll squeeze some glue on here. And then I'm going to take the chisel tip of my foam brush and grab some of the glue. And notice that I'm holding the board off of my work surface, and I'll just add that glue so that the chisel tip gets the glue right to the edge of that line. This is really important. Now this board is quite thirsty. I guess the art of practicing this is learning exactly how much glue to apply, and it looks like I'm a little on the dry side. I'm just going to add a little bit more so that it spreads easily. It shouldn't be soaking in until it's just shiny. It needs to be, and it fully absorbed. You need to have a little shade of white there to indicate you have enough glue. Semi-opaque white. Okay, now I can see this entire surface has this glue applied. I'm going to fly blind now and place the corner of this board into the corner of my intersecting lines that I made earlier. Line it up as accurately as I can. Just give it a little push. Now I'm going to check my work. Look at that. The edge of my paper is right along the edge of that line I drew. So nice. And you can see there's no bubbles or lumps in that glue surface. It's perfect. Next up, I'm going to grab my grid ruler. This is handy. I need to add next the spine piece, okay? This is 2 inches by 8 inches. And when I add it, I need to make sure that there's a 1/4 inch gutter between this piece and the spine. If you don't have that nice gutter there, it's going to tear the paper when the book functions and opens and closes, and we don't want that. Now, a 1/4 inch is 2 cubes on the ruler, and a cube is formed by a dotted or a dashed line or a solid line, so just be aware of that. And it doesn't matter what measurement I'm looking at, as long as when I place this down, there are 2 cubes separating the pieces, okay? So I need to thoroughly apply glue to my spine. I'm going to hold it off my work surface and brush the glue from the center to one edge in long sweeping strokes. And then I'm just going to move my fingers to the other edge of the spine and then add the remaining. Now, I've been in classes where this can take a really long time, and it shouldn't. It should just be quick and easy, and you're not painting the glue on, you're sweeping it on. And notice how I'm resting the spine piece along the edge of my ruler here. And that just allows me to make sure it's level with the previous piece. And I can also get that measurement, that 1/4 inch that I need separating these 2 pieces. Now the same applies for the next piece, which is going to be the last 8x8 board. Notice we have this 3-inch area where we marked it with our pencil. No glue here, okay? I'm going to apply the glue and place it down. I'm flying blind again. I may not be as accurate as I was the last time. I'm going to be pretty close. It'll be fine. And place that right there, 2 cubes away from the spine. So I'll apply my glue to the 3-inch area while I hold this off of my desk, okay? And then again, I will use the chisel tip to get the glue right along the pencil line. Ta-da. And then I'm going to do the other edge of this side. My brush at this point is getting quite saturated with glue. It's absorbing a lot of it. So just keep that in mind. You don't want things dripping. So you don't want too much. And again, that's just a matter of practice. The more books you make, and if you can tell, I've made a lot of books, the better you'll get at judging the appropriate amount of glue. And you'll get those habits formed, like holding things off your work surface while you're working with them. And the ruler helps me keep all 3 of these pieces nice and level. That's another nice thing to have. I guess now I need to check my work, don't I? How did I do? I'm going to flip it over. I might have a little bit of glue. Oh, geez, looks really good. I'm very happy with that. very happy with that. Now I'm burnishing a little bit. Now, one thing about burnishing is that if you burnish firmly, especially on a textured paper like this, you can scar it. So I'm taking a bone folder, I'm taking my instructions and covering the paper with my instructions while I just make sure I work out any, get all those contact points made beautifully. Nice. Okay, so this is now connecting. Do you see how this is going to form the spine of our book cover? Okay, we have these naked areas we need to cover, and that's going to happen with these stunningly gorgeous prints from that Rainforest kit. So I'm going to pick up my cover here, and I'll apply glue to one side at a time. Same thing, the chisel tip is what will bring us the glue right up to the seam of our spine cover. It makes really nice work of this. Then you're going to fan that glue out to the edges. And because I'm holding this off of my work surface while I work, that means I'm not going to get glue on my table, which will then transfer to my project, and I want to avoid that if I can. Again, these habits are formed by practice. So if this is your first book, I want to encourage you to be patient with yourself. Now, to land this in the perfect spot, I found something that works really well, is I rest this cover along the spine, the green in other words, and I'm going to slide it until it clicks into place. It just sort of falls in, and get it nice and tight in there. So that's literally seamless almost. I mean, it is a seam, of course, but I'm just burnish that a little with my fingertips, and then I'm just going to turn this around, and guess what? I get to do that again. Apply the glue to the board. Use your chisel tipped brush to get right up to that seam. And if you need more glue, you just pick it up from where you applied it. Never apply the glue right to the edge of the seam here, but just gather it up. And now I'm making those long strokes again while I hold this off of my desk. Get all the way to the edge, because if you don't have glue there, it's not going to stick there. So you want to make sure it's thoroughly covered. Okay, here I come again for the slide. Just slide it along the green until it clicks in. Get as tight as you can to the neighboring paper. And if you have enough glue there, it will allow you to slide. If it's too dry, it might just like suddenly start sticking. The amount of glue you use often is impacted by the amount of time you need to be able to work with it, right? Okay, so now I have this outside covered. It's beautiful. I think now would be a good time to miter those corners so we can wrap these flaps around the book. I'm going to take scissors and I'm going to remove the corner paper, but not directly to the tip of the mat board. I want to make sure that there's at least the same width of the mat board, or book board rather, extending past the edge of the tip, okay? The book board is an eighth of an inch, and so is the ruler. So a beginner tip would be to place the ruler perpendicular to the corner, draw a line on the outside edge of the ruler, and then cut outside that line just to make sure you have enough. Once you really get this, I kind of like to make a little V. You'll have your own little way of doing it, but this is kind of my preferred method. I go toward the corner and then away from the corner. There. Our first scraps of the day. Next up, we need to prepare the corners, or prepare these flaps we just made to wrap themselves around the board. I prefer to do that without glue. So I'm going to push down on the board and take my bone folder and just go under the flap and push it up against the side edge of the board. Then I grab the flap, bring it around, and then make that crease. So basically you're putting two creases into the paper. So again, pressure on the left, bring it up and over. Bring it up, grab it, and then seal it over. Now again, there's no glue here, but by virtue of the fact that we're doing this now, it's going to make that gluing process much, much easier. Again, pressure, bring it up and over. Up and over. You see there's this whole series of flaps. Now when we glue these down, we are going to glue down the flaps on the long edges first. I think the reason I do that is because I want to get it over with. Just get it done. And then we'll end with those easier short flaps. I'm going to work probably in sections here. This is a pretty big book cover. So I'm using the glue that's already in my brush. Remember earlier I said we were picking up and absorbing a lot of glue in the brush. So I'd like to get rid of that before I add more. Do you notice that I'm holding up my book cover here off of the edge of my desk? And if I wasn't, I'd be getting glue all over. Now you can absolutely grab maybe an old catalog or magazine or something and then work with that. But I find that if you just make a practice out of holding it up, then you save yourself a lot of time and mess. So do you see how the amount of glue that I applied was perfect for these flaps to just literally bond with the paper? I mean, isn't that nice? And here you go. I'm just going to burnish that a little bit. And instead of going to this side now, I'm going to go completely to the opposite edge of the book. And I've used a lot of the glue that was in the tip of my brush, so I'm going to add a little bit of glue, but I'm avoiding the corners and like these transition areas here. Again, the only reason those flaps stuck so well is that the entire flap had adhesive on it. I also like to make sure I get some adhesive onto the edge of that board too, so that it bonds well on those edges. You don't want edges like gaping or anything in there. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So did you notice how I started in the middle? I just bring that up and over. And you might, if you're just starting out and you're a little bit slower with your glue application, you may just want to work one section, literally one section at a time. So apply the glue, turn it over, then do the next section, apply the glue, wrap it around, okay? But that you're gonna find out, you're gonna know. Okay, so now the long flaps are all wrapped up. And now I have this excess paper to deal with on these corners. The way I like to do that is just take the tip of my bone folder and turn that paper in so it wraps itself along the side of that board. And then when I flip this over, do you see that beautiful corner I just made? I mean, that is just gorgeous, okay? Now before I get started with that, I'm gonna flip the thing around. As long as I'm at it, I'm gonna wrap these two corners in. You're just tucking that in, tucking that excess paper. If you don't have the excess paper, there's nothing to tuck. And guess what you get to look at forever and ever? The corner of your board instead of a beautifully wrapped, bookmaker's finished cover. I love teaching this in classes, and, people just learning this for the first time love learning this trick. It just helps you level up and make your handmade books so much nicer looking and more professional. I'm all about leveling up if you can. Okay, now I'm going to rotate. I've already prepared this. I'm going to add a little bit of glue to this flap. Again, I avoid the corners so the glue doesn't pull there. Fan it out to the edge while I hold it off of my desk. And I always kind of have the same spot where I set my brush down away from my working stuff. I don't want to get my brush glue all over the place either. Oh, that looks so nice. Next, we'll prepare this clever little easel hinge for the outside of the book spine so we can display it upright, but also put it on a shelf. To make that, I need the remaining largest piece of this medium green, and let's place it horizontally on our work surface so that the texture side is facing down. Then I want to measure 3/4 of an inch from the bottom edge to make a line, a guideline, and every solid line on this ruler is 1/4 inch. So the first solid line takes us to 1/4, and then 1/2, and then 3/4. Okay, so I'm just gonna line that up neatly and mark all the way across. Then I'm gonna rotate my ruler so it's now vertical, and I need to do the same thing from the left edge here. So 1, 2, 3/4 of an inch from this edge. And now I have my guidelines. This is just like what we did before with those big book covers. When we apply glue to this, we're gonna set it right where those pencil lines intersect. So I'll add a little glue to this. I'm really running out. I'm gonna make it. Okay, and now fan that glue to the outer edge while I hold it up and just rotate. Okay, I'm aiming for my pencil intersecting points, and that's gonna give me a nice even border around all the way around. I'm gonna re-enter with my ruler again. And when I add this guy, I need to have a full 1/4 of an inch separating this piece and this piece, just like before with the spine. So even though these are thinner, much thinner pieces of mat board, I need to have that wide hinge because this hinge needs to fully be able to function all the way flat, okay? So that's why we need a wider space. Don't ask me how I know this. Okay, following the same process, we're going to miter those corners by trimming toward that tip, but not to it, okay? You want to leave, now in this case, about, you know, just shy of 1/8 of an inch maybe of paper. You can always deal with more paper, but it's harder to deal with not enough. You can't make more paper happen once it's gone. Okay, so now I'm gonna see how I do the same thing. I push down, bring the flap over, and then burnish it. Bring the flap over. You get a lot of practice at this until it just gets to be automatic, very, very easy. Okay, so there I have that. And I'm gonna start again by adhering my long flaps with the glue that remains in my brush. Plenty there. I was holding off my work surface. I sound like a broken record, but I'd like to remind you of that because it's a habit that forms. It's just like when you're using the trimmer and you push down on the clear bar to stabilize your paper. It's a habit that needs to be formed, so you need to do it quite a few times to make it a habit. With the long flaps adhered, then I'm going to do that same little tuck move that I did with the larger piece. It's just not quite as much. You can see that. It's a little move, but it means so much. It's like the #1 secret to crafting is the tuck to make the perfect corner. Now don't get all excited and attach that inside cover yet either, because we have some ribbon to add to this. That would be my temptation. Usually just go right to adding this and I'd be like, oh no, I need to sandwich some ribbon in there. Okay, so that's the start of my hinge. I'm gonna grab my ruler, and in your kit there's some ribbon. I'm choosing the beautiful teal colored ribbon that has the silver sparkle. And I'm gonna put this back the same way we started, with this longer portion of the mat board on the left and the littler portion on the right. Ribbon does have a grain, so I'm gonna end up making a loop out of this ribbon, so I want to make sure that the grain direction of the ribbon cooperates with the direction of the loop, just like we would if we were trimming the paper. I thought ahead to all those cuts to make sure we'd be folding in cooperation with the grain. So I'm adding some glue here and attaching this to the end. Now we can add our hinge cover, and that's going to go right here, sandwiching the ribbon between it. So this can be tricky, but it's a nice small piece for you to work on. I'm going to go ahead and hold this too, and between two fingers, just like I did with all of my other pieces, and just kind of support it a little bit and add my adhesive. Now, if you would prefer to work with this on some paper, you know, on some scrap paper or something, so you have more support, that's fine, absolutely fine. I always just like use an old catalog or scrap paper and, you know, junk mail, and use a clean sheet every time. So then with the glue applied edge to edge, you should be able to place this over your hinge and it will center on there perfectly. Nice little margin all the way around. Very professional. Now you do have this little hinge over here. I kind of like to take the pad of my thumb and work it in. You never want to take anything pointy in there because you do risk, you know, tearing the paper. But this is exactly what I want that hinge to do. Yay! Next, we need to attach this to our beautiful book spine. And to find the best position, you will want to make sure this largest part of the hinge with the ribbon tailing off is at the bottom edge of your book. And I'm going to apply the glue to this 1 by 2 inch area here. So let me get that going. Okay, so then I need to reevaluate my placement. So I'm just going to line that up at the bottom and drop her down. Okay, it doesn't take long for this bookbinding glue to dry. I mean, have I mentioned that I love this product? Okay, so now we've opened back up and we need to make like a little bit of a loop. And I want this loop to be about 4 inches in length. So if it's folded in half, and if I just bring this up so that the 2-inch mark is where the crease is, that means from here to here, that's a 4-inch loop. Does that make sense? Add some glue here. And again, I'm using my grid pad now to verify my 2-inch give or take. It doesn't have to be exact. All right, my friends, it can just be approximately 4 inches total. And that's what's going to hold that in place when you stand your book upright. How cool is that? Now we're moving on to pocket B. So let's take everything out of there. There isn't much in there really. Now we have these beautiful inside covers, and I'm just going to dry fit these. In other words, place them without any glue just to make sure I know where I'm headed. You've got a little margin peeking through on both sides, and this piece should be level with the previously added green pieces. So you know exactly where to place this. Now, because this is such a large piece, I am going to grab some scrap paper so I can apply glue to the smooth side of this piece without worrying about getting it all over my work surface. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm really getting down there. You'll have lots of glue left after you do this project, provided you don't, go crazy. I've made several of these with one bottle of the glue. So now I am brushing my glue, and you want to make pretty quick work of this, because if you just dilly-dally around with it, the glue will start to dry and turn clear, and then you won't get the kind of adhesion we're looking for. As moisture enters the paper, it's going to start curling, so you got to plan for that as well. And that's why the more quickly we work, the less we got to do with it. Okay, that's looking really good. So now I'm never going to see this paper again. And I'm going to bring my project back on the scene. And again, make sure, now notice how the paper is curling in the same direction we're applying. That's because it's curling in the direction of the grain of the paper. And then we specifically made sure that this would happen. I wanted the paper of the spine bending in the direction of the spine. So that's why I so carefully had you plan for that. And I'm just working my way from left to right here. Then, because this is a little bit of a smaller piece, I can manage this okay. So I'm going to cup this in my hand rather than use the scrap paper. Really getting down there on my glue. And notice that I just cup it in the palm of my hand. So if you feel, you've got a little practice under your belt and you feel comfortable applying the glue this way, it's a quick and easy way to avoid using your scrap paper and getting it done. And then this is going to go here. Lining it up. Oop. All right, with my glue down and my bottle nearly empty, I think this is really close to the end of my needs of this particular bottle. Now this one, my paper went a little further than my seam, so I'm just going to look to my right here, check my margins, my reveal, and make sure it lines up really nicely. And then I'll just burnish that. Looking gorgeous. Okay, so this is the completed book. Isn't it beautiful? Now we can set this aside and grab your accordion pocket file and pull the papers out of pocket C. And that includes our larger pieces and our small hinges. And now as we do some folding, we're going to make sure that the bump of the score line, or the raised score line, gets sandwiched on the inside of the fold. And each of these hinges has 2 folds you're going to make. And thankfully, the direction of the fold cooperates with the grain of the paper. Because if it wouldn't, this hot dog fold, as I like to call them, would be much more, it would be much more of a battle, let's just say. We don't want to battle with our paper hinges by any means. The paper can break more easily. This way it just goes, oh, okay, yeah, I can fold this way, that's fine. So there are 4 little hinges that look like the letter U, thus the name of my little project here. And then you're going to take just a second and go ahead and fold each one of the 8 inside pages. I'll probably fast forward through this to save a little time. Once I have everything folded, I like to then take my bone folder after stacking everything up neatly and just burnish all those creases all at once. As we prepare to install these pages, you can decide what order you want them to be. Like I'm gonna go, what I did in my other book, light green, dark green, print, aqua. light green, dark green, print, aqua. You can sort them into any order you wish. Now what we need to start out by doing is installing these hinges into the book spine. So make sure you're on the inside of the book. The hinges are the same exact height as the spine cover, okay? So that little margin is there, it's the same height. We're gonna install the back hinge first so that the edge of our folded hinge is just inside of the spine. Don't let it get into the gutter here or you're not going to be able to function the book properly. Now I found the best way to apply glue to the hinge, there are two ways. If you happen to have some of our bookbinding glue in a needle tip applicator, what I like to do is just dispense the glue like this while I hold the hinge flat. That's kind of critical. If you want to take your foam brush and just kind of spread it a little bit, but this is just a really nice, accurate, and even application of our bookbinding glue. Again, the hinge is being held flat. And I'm gonna flip it over so that this folded edge that's glued is visible to me, and I'm gonna drop it right onto the spine, level with the inside spine cover, and next to the gutter, but not in the gutter. Stay out of the gutter, okay? Oh, and then I'm gonna burnish that a little bit. Then I'm gonna open that one flap and burnish the actual part of the hinge that's attached, and then I'm going to pick up the other flap. All right, so it's going to look like a little butterfly wing sticking up. Hope you can see that. Now our next hinge needs to be attached about 1/4 of an inch or 2 cubes from the first one. If you want to measure and mark 2 cubes away, that's totally fine with me. I've done it a number of different ways, including eyeballing it, because I kind of know how much 1/4 of an inch is. So again, I'm going to flatten the hinge so I can just see the scored area. I'll apply my bookbinding glue to the hinge. Spreading it out isn't imperative at all. I'm kind of looking for a good, even application. Flip it, and then separate the first hinge with about 1/4 of an inch here, trying to keep it vertically as level as I can. Burnish, pick it up, burnish, pick it up, burnish. And then see how quickly that glue dries. Now I have 2 hinges attached and they're both 1/4 of an inch apart. I'm going to attach the remaining 2 hinges in the same way. And now all of these hinges are beautifully attached, and they're going to allow us to install our inside pages without having to do any stitching or sewing. Now remember when I chose my order, I had the first page to be installed was the light green and the last page was aqua. I'm going to turn this stack over so the aqua faces me because I'm going to install my pages from the back to the front. Now, each one of these flaps has a front side and a back side. Front, back, and so on. So if I look at my very, very, very last hinge, this is the back side of it. Never put anything on the back side of a hinge. Don't ask me why I know this. Just put it on the front side of the hinge. In this case, it's the smooth side. So this is the back of the 8th hinge. This is the front. Now I'm going to go ahead and apply my glue right to the flap here, like this. I love that needle tip applicator. So I'm picking up the very last page and I'm going to turn it over so I can see my flap. I want the square side to be against the flap. That's not, again, it doesn't have to be this color. Now, what's important here is that this page is level with my back cover, more so than that it's level with the hinge, okay? Because the hinge might have slight imperfections, I want these pages to be all level with each other. And then I don't want the fold of my page to get into the fold of the hinge. If I do, that page won't function properly. It'll kind of get caught on the hinge and not be as good. Now, once you press down on this and burnish a little, you want to go to the back and also just double check that's nothing oozing out there, that it looks good, okay? That's beautiful. Nice, page 8 installed. Now, this is the back of a hinge. No. If you want to put an X on it, you can do that. Or if you want to just put like a 7, you know, for your 7th page. I'm now folding over the other half of that hinge to the front side, and that's where the glue is going to go. This time I'm on a textured side here. take my next page, which in this case is a print, and I'm checking to make sure this page is level with the previous page and that it's not touching the fold of the hinge itself so that it can move freely and not get caught. That's one thing I learned the first time I came up with this. I made a sample for the very first time I came up with this binding method. And I couldn't figure out why these pages were getting caught, and that was why. Now I'm turning again to the front side of the next flap, and you'll continue to attach all the remaining pages in the exact same manner. And there you have your book, the easel. So if you wanted to put it on display, you just rest it against the easel and you can flip through it. I mean, how cool is that? Next, you have the entire contents of Pocket D, and there is a lot in there. What I suggest you do, no matter what kit you happen to be using for this, you're gonna look at your cut apart selection and you're gonna figure out what piece of art you want to put on the outside front of the book. And in this case, I chose to use this tag. I also chose this really cool charm, and I topped him with some jute, and I cut off the corners and matted him with some paper from the D pocket, and there will be plenty of paper in that D pocket. So decorating the front is probably the most critical place to begin. Now, your kit also includes some tags. Those are fun, and a dozen photo mats. Plus, and you have all those cut aparts that you can use for titles and embellishments. Plus, you have all of these sheets, these full-size sheets that you can use to decorate the pages that are white on one side and so on. I'm just going to give you a quick tour so that you can follow your own muse and decorate it. So here I used a border strip to cover the seam on the cover. Added Welcome to the Jungle. I love this big cut apart, and I just trimmed it down to fit. Then on the other side, I added a photo mat, and it peeks past the edge here, which I like the look of that. Then a border that said the world is full of magic things with another horizontal photo mat. Here, I added just a portion of that print that I trimmed from the print to the plain side of this flap, and then a shorter photo mat on this side with the little monkey. Another mat peeking out from the flap. Around to the corner here to finish him off. I added these three elements to a paper and then added to the tag that we've included in the kit. Here I just added paper to the edge, one of the scraps that I had. Matted this, added a photo mat on the other side that was 4x6. So much fun. You can see how the coordinating elements help decorate all the pages. Ribbons, you can add your journaling prompts, tags, that kind of thing. Here, your kit came with a great big burlap bag and an extra tag that will fit inside the bag. And your kit also includes a stencil that you can add decorative art to the white side of the pages if you wish. You could stencil some of those white areas if you want. And here we are at the end of the book, and it's all ready for photos from your latest adventures. Now, if you watch that and you're just thinking, Tricia, there's no way I could ever make that, I just want to encourage you to give it a try. Be patient with yourself, take your time, follow along step by step. I used to be a piano teacher, and that's how we learned how to play the piano, note by note, step by step. And before you know it, you become so much more coordinated and you can play the music. I hope you love this project, and I really sincerely hope you'll give it a try. Stay tuned to our Club Scrap blog to learn more about ways we use this same exact project with both different themed kits. And while you're at it, think about joining us as a member of Club Scrap. You'll always save $8 on kits and 10% on everything else. And plus, you have this wonderful community you can become a part of and watch our workshops every single month to level up your crafting skills. I look forward to seeing you in a workshop again soon. Thanks for joining me.